In a world where power often overshadows compassion, a billionaire CEO fires a single mother for being late. Just once. She walks out that night with nothing except her son's small hand and an unbreakable will. 25 years later, that same boy walks into the CEO's hospital room not seeking revenge but to save his life. What began as cruelty becomes redemption, because greatness isn't born from power or wealth, it's forged in love, sacrifice, and the courage to do what's right. This is the Echoes of Greatness, a story of injustice, redemption, and the miracle that comes when hope refuses to die.
In 2001, in a quiet suburban town in the United States, Clara Ramirez woke before dawn, her alarm a soft whisper against the pre-dawn silence. The small, rented house felt cold, but the sight of her sleeping son, Leo, tucked cozily in his bed, filled her with a warmth that defied the chill. She was a single mother, navigating the labyrinthine challenges of life with a tenacity born of fierce love. Her job at Sterling Innovations, a gleaming citadel of corporate ambition, was her lifeline, a source of stability she clung to despite the relentless demands and the quiet, almost imperceptible erosion of her spirit. Every late night, every early morning, every discarded proposal that bore her name was a brick laid in the foundation of Leo's future. The echoes of societal disregard, the unspoken judgment, the uphill battle for recognition often hummed in the back of her mind. A discordant melody she fought daily to mute with sheer will. Clara was good at her job, exceptional even, but in the cutthroat world of Sterling Innovations, good was often overshadowed by ruthless efficiency. Mr. Alistair Sterling, the CEO, was a man carved from ice and ambition. His empire built on numbers, not nuanced human stories. He had an uncanny ability to reduce individuals to data points, their lives mere variables in his grand equation of profit. Clara knew this, yet she held on to a quiet dignity, a hope that her unwavering dedication would speak louder than any quarterly report. That hope shattered on a crisp autumn afternoon. Clara was called into Sterling's office, a sanctuary of polished chrome and chilling silence. The air thrummed with unspoken finality. Sterling, impassive behind his expansive desk, didn't mince words. "Ms. Ramirez," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth, "we're streamlining. Your position, regrettable as it is, no longer aligns with our core objectives." Clara's heart plummeted. She tried to plead, to explain her perfect attendance, her recent successful project, her desperate need. His gaze was unwavering, cold as a winter moon. "Sentimentality," he declared, echoing a phrase he'd likely uttered countless times, "has no place in business." "Ms. Ramirez." Effective immediately, she stumbled out, the polished corridors blurring, the weight of the world pressing down on her. The usual struggling, disregarding echo in her mind screamed now, a cacophony of fear and despair. How would she face Leo? How would she rebuild? The ensuing years were a blur of unimaginable hardship. Clara worked 3 jobs, sometimes 4, her hands chapped, her body weary, but her spirit unbroken. She cleaned offices by night, waited tables by day, and somehow always found time to help Leo with his homework, to read him stories, to whisper affirmations into his sleeping ear. "You are brilliant, my son," she'd murmur. "You are kind. Never let anyone tell you you're not enough." Leo, a bright and observant child, understood their struggle, not with resentment, but with a quiet, burning resolve. He saw his mother's sacrifices, felt the sting of their poverty, and channeled it all into an insatiable hunger for knowledge, a deep-seated desire to alleviate suffering. The memory of his mother's tear-streaked face after that fateful day at Sterling Innovations was a constant, silent catalyst. He wouldn't just succeed, he would make a difference. Alistair Sterling, once the epitome of unyielding power, now lay in a sterile hospital bed, a shadow of his former self. The gleaming towers of Sterling Innovations seemed a distant, irrelevant memory. He was old, frail, and battling a rare, aggressive autoimmune disease that had systematically stripped him of his health, his arrogance, and, perhaps most painfully, his control. The same relentless drive that had propelled him to the pinnacle of corporate success now felt like a hollow, lonely echo in the vast emptiness of his private room. The best specialists in the world had been consulted, their prognosis grim. His last, desperate hope rested on a groundbreaking surgical procedure, pioneered and performed by a young, almost legendary surgeon whose name was whispered with reverence throughout the medical community. Dr. Ramirez, the nurses would say, their voices hushed with admiration as they discussed his exceptional skill and compassionate demeanor. Sterling, drugged and disoriented, paid little attention. The name was vaguely familiar, perhaps from some fleeting headline, but his own impending mortality overshadowed all else. He was terrified, a sensation utterly alien to a man who had always commanded, never pleaded. His life, once a symphony of calculated risks and decisive victories, was now reduced to the rhythmic beeping of machines and the chilling uncertainty of tomorrow. He was alone, utterly and completely, the vast wealth he had amassed providing no comfort, no antidote to the gnawing fear that choked him now. The day of the pre-operative consultation dawned, cold and crisp, much like that day 25 years ago when Clara's world had crumbled. Sterling's heart pounded, a frantic drum against his ribs. The door to his room opened, and a figure stepped in, tall, commanding, radiating an aura of quiet strength and profound empathy. He was young, yet his eyes held a wisdom that belied his years. "Mr. Sterling," the surgeon began, his voice calm, measured, "I'm Dr. Leo Ramirez. I'll be performing your surgery." Sterling's breath hitched. The name, the eyes. Those were Clara's eyes, unmistakably, profoundly. A jolt of ice-cold recognition shot through him, followed by a searing wave of shame. This young man, this brilliant surgeon, was the son of the woman he had so casually, so cruelly dismissed. Leo's gaze was professional, unwavering, betraying no hint of past grievance, only a focused, quiet determination to heal. He explained the procedure with precision, his demeanor impeccable. Sterling, however, heard little beyond the drumming of his own heart, now pounding not just with fear of the knife, but with the terrifying, humbling realization that fate, in its infinite irony, had brought him face to face with the living embodiment of his past transgression. His carefully constructed facade of invincibility shattered, replaced by a profound sense of shock, regret, and a dawning, terrifying understanding of the human cost of his callous ambition. Leo had indeed become the man his mother had always known he could be. Clara's unwavering belief, her countless sacrifices, had been the fertile ground for his ambition. The unjust firing, initially a source of immense pain, had inadvertently become a powerful catalyst, forging a spirit of resilience and a profound commitment to service within him. He hadn't pursued medicine out of a desire for revenge, but out of a deep-seated need to heal, to alleviate suffering, to honor the quiet dignity of people like his mother who battled unseen struggles. His brilliance in the operating room was matched only by his deep empathy for his patients. He remembered the sting of his mother's tears, the echoes of her struggle, and vowed never to let a patient feel like a mere number, a variable in a cold equation. He was a testament to the power of a mother's love, a living echo of greatness that had blossomed from the most unlikely, painful of seeds. The surgery was a success, a testament to Leo's extraordinary skill. In the days following, as Sterling slowly recovered, the weight of his past became unbearable. One afternoon, as Leo made his rounds, Sterling, his voice raspy and tinged with a humility he'd never known, finally spoke. "Dr. Ramirez." "Leo," he began, struggling to meet his gaze. I was a different man once. A cruel man. Your mother was a dedicated employee, a good woman. What I did, it was unforgivable. I am truly, deeply sorry." Leo listened, his expression thoughtful. "Mr. Sterling," he replied, his voice gentle but firm, "what happened to my mother was difficult for both of us. It was an injustice, but it also taught me about resilience, about the power of perseverance, and about the importance of compassion in a world that often forgets it. It made me who I am today." There was no bitterness, no triumph in Leo's voice, only a profound understanding that transcended past wrongs. Sterling, profoundly transformed by his near-death experience and this confrontation with his past, began to live a different life. He established the Clara Ramirez Foundation, a substantial endowment dedicated to providing scholarships for aspiring medical students from single-parent households, ensuring that no deserving child would ever face the same financial despair Leo and Clara once had. He stepped back from the ruthless world of corporate acquisitions, dedicating his remaining years to philanthropy, finally understanding that true legacy wasn't built on profits, but on the profound, unseen echoes of human connection and kindness. Months later, Leo visited Clara, now a proud grandmother, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes still holding that unyielding, loving fire. They sat on her porch swing, the same swing where she'd once whispered dreams into his ear, watching her granddaughter play in the golden hues of a setting sun. "You always told me, Mama," Leo began, taking her calloused hand, "that what goes around, comes around." Clara smiled, a lifetime of struggle, sacrifice, and ultimate triumph etched in the beautiful lines of her face. "And sometimes, my son," she replied, her voice soft with wisdom, "what comes around brings its own miracles, creating echoes far greater than any sound." The unjust firing, once a moment of devastating despair, had blossomed into an extraordinary testament to the indomitable human spirit, proving that kindness, resilience, and an unwavering belief in hope could ultimately transform even the coldest of hearts. The echoes of greatness, once almost disregarded, now resonated profoundly. The sterile hospital room, hours after Dr. Leo Ramirez's shocking revelation, was no longer a place of healing, but a crucible of fear. Alistair Sterling, still weak from surgery, was paralyzed by the truth. A subsidiary of Sterling Innovations, Leo's words repeated in the disregarding echo of his mind. The toxic compound, the root of his near-fatal illness, was a ghost from his own corporate past. The injustice he had casually dealt Clara 25 years ago had returned, not as poetic justice, but as physical poison. Sterling stared at the ceiling, his wealth and power suddenly meaningless. He had built his empire on the notion that sentimentality has no place in business, yet his lack of sentimentality was literally choking the life out of him. The reflective torment was immediate. Every cold decision, every fired employee, every corner cut, culminated in this moment of terrifying accountability. He finally understood the emotional cost of his ruthless ambition. Leo, the triumphant underdog, stood firm. He had done his ethical duty as a doctor, saving the life of the man who ruined his mother's career. Now he faced a moral duty as a citizen. The secret he held was an earthquake, capable of toppling an empire and exposing a tragedy far greater than Sterling's personal illness, a silent contamination affecting the entire suburban town where he grew up. "It's bigger than just us." Leo's parting words had implied a high-stakes, life-changing choice for Sterling. The billionaire could use his vast resources to crush the evidence, pay off Leo, and ensure his legacy remained intact. Or he could choose redemption, an act of inspiration that would redeem his soul, even if it meant destroying everything he'd built. The suspense ratcheted up when Sterling's COO and legal counsel, a pair of slick, terrifyingly efficient men, arrived. They spoke in hushed, menacing tones, offering Leo a blank check, a staggering sum to buy his silence, framed as a research grant. "It's about closing this liability, Doctor," the counsel purred. "A simple, fast-paced transfer. You get more funding than you'll ever need." Leo met their gaze, his eyes burning with the fire Clara had instilled. "You can't buy the truth," he said, the words heavy with motivational conviction. "And you can't buy back the years of suffering your compound caused." Leo was unwavering. His true bottom line was justice, not currency. Leo knew he couldn't take on Sterling Innovations alone. He needed undeniable proof. He drove back to the small suburban home, the journey a powerful, reflective moment on his path from poverty to prestige. He found his mother, Clara, now running a small, successful tailoring shop, her quiet dignity restored. When Leo explained the shocking truth that Sterling's illness was linked to his own corporate negligence, Clara's initial emotional shock gave way to a hardened resolve. She reached into an old cedar chest, pulling out a tarnished metal lockbox. "They fired me for a minor infraction, Leo," Clara said, her voice filled with decades of suppressed hurt. "But the real reason was this. Inside the box wasn't just the severance letter. There was a thin, yellowed copy of a confidential internal memo, a safety report she had flagged just weeks before her firing. It detailed preliminary concerns about the toxic compound's stability and risk of runoff into the local water table, marked with the internal code name, Project Goliathan. "I tried to warn them," Clara whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "They called it disregarding echo, a distraction. They fired me to silence the report, not the woman." This wasn't just proof. It was the life-changing piece of the puzzle, tying Sterling directly to the cover-up and transforming Leo's fight from personal vengeance into a massive public health crusade. The underdog mother, fired for her integrity, was handing her surgeon's son the weapon to dismantle the very empire that had crushed her. Armed with Clara's memo, Leo returned to the hospital. He confronted Sterling one last time, presenting the yellow document. "This is your chance, Mr. Sterling," Leo challenged, not as his doctor, but as his judge. "You saved your profits then. Now, you can save your legacy. You can save the people in our town who are suffering the same fate you almost met." The moment was taut with suspense and hope. Sterling looked at the memo, then at the face of the man who held his life in his hands. He saw the fire of the underdog and the pure motivational spirit that had overcome his greed. For the first time, Alistair Sterling chose humanity over dollars. He called an emergency board meeting. The scene was electric. The frail billionaire, freshly out of surgery, alongside the young, formidable Dr. Ramirez. Sterling, with Leo's support, delivered a shattering admission. He confessed to the cover-up of Project Goliathan, exposing the decades of environmental damage and public health neglect. The boardroom erupted in surprising betrayal and panic. Sterling signed over a massive portion of his personal wealth, establishing a trust to fund the cleanup, medical care, and lifelong monitoring for the affected community. He stepped down, not in disgrace, but in an act of profound, inspirational repentance. He shattered his empire, but in doing so, he saved his soul. Years later, the Clara Ramirez Foundation for Environmental Health and Medical Equity stood as a beacon in the suburban town, a permanent monument to the power of one mother's integrity. Leo, now a renowned figure, continued his surgical work while overseeing the foundation, embodying the American dream realized through moral courage. Alistair Sterling, stripped of his power but not his dignity, spent his final years in quiet, tireless work for the foundation, finding a hopeful purpose in cleaning up the toxic residue of his past. The emotional journey of the Ramirez family was complete. The initial injustice had not been a curse, but the painful genesis of an extraordinary triumph. The underdog had not just won. They had reformed the system. Their story was no longer just about personal victory. It was a powerful, life-changing reflective lesson, a reminder that the true measure of greatness lies not in how much you accumulate, but how much you are willing to sacrifice for what is right. This was the end of the corporate giant, but the reckoning became the ultimate motivational echo of greatness, proving that justice, though sometimes delayed, is always saved by the pure spirit of a mother's love and a son's unwavering commitment to hope.